This is going to be sort of a deep dive look in how to beat Giovanni, and it could be from the perspective of an expert, which we're going to have on the left, that's my main account, or a beginner, which is on the right, and that's somebody I know in real life who let me actually use this account, so it's very interesting. So, let's dive in first. We're going to move a little bit slower as we talk about things. Normally my videos usually have to fit within like 3 to 4 minutes or so, which is how long a fight might take, and I try to just cover so many different topics, boom, 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 really quick, right? And really efficient. So this will be a little bit slowed down, hopefully calmer. But on the left, we're at level 48. On the right, we're at level 27. So obviously a big level gap. Now, I mentioned that not only to illustrate the whole expert on the left, beginner on the right, that sort of thing, but also Team Go Rocket in any of the fights, grunts, leaders, Giovanni. The CP amounts are going to scale based on what your trainer level is. So you could see with our expert on the left at level 48 that the Persian is 7836 CP, whereas the Persian on the right with our beginner account at level 27, it's 4136. We're almost talking about cut in half, somewhat close. So that's just one principle to remember, right? I'll mention here, this is very relevant, okay? So this is a good point. All of the videos on this channel, it's like 9 times out of 10, I am beating Giovanni 1500 CP or below. I'm always setting that kind of handicap on myself because it's good, especially for this point about the levels. You know, my accounts might be above level 40, 48 in this case. If I'm using Pokemon that are below 1500 CP, you could theoretically use ones more like this, which today, for our expert, we stayed below the Ultra League, so that's 2500 CP. And for the beginner account on the right, we didn't set like a hard and fast rule, it could be above that. But point is, budget options are completely covered on this channel. That's like really what I stress and try to do every single time. But for a video like this, where we illustrate beginner and expert, I allow myself to go a little bit higher. And so with that, our expert, we did decide to open up with Decidueye at first, but quickly change into Terrakion. Terrakion is really the one we wanted to deal with this Persian. So that's what we got to break down right now. There's actually a video on this channel that's just entirely about the Persian all by itself. It's a little bit dated at this point because it was made back in like 2020. But this video, these two accounts, this crystallizes exactly how the Persian fight could go. It can feel very different depending on what the fast attack is of the Persian. So Persian on the right against our beginner was using Feint Attack. That's a dark type attack that doesn't really hit you as fast. It's a little bit harder per hit, but not as fast as the one on the left, which is Scratch. And so Scratch is a normal type attack. It might be smaller damage per hit, but those hits just come fast and ferociously. So either way, we're going to get into our next kind of, let's call it pro tip or whatever. But our next hint here is that you're going to want Pokemon with spammy kind of movesets that can shut down, especially something like Persian with Scratch. But really, making Team Go Rocket stop in their tracks, and this works really good with Giovanni. If you're ever struggling, that is key. So, what do we mean spammy attacks, right? If you don't understand me, I just basically mean fast attacks that generate a lot of energy per hit, while then having charge moves on your Pokemon that don't really take a lot of energy to fire off, right? So, something we can say about our beginner today on the right side is that they don't really have Pokemon that are optimized for this fight, but we can make some choices that win despite that. So the spammy movesets is one of those, right? Yeah, like Kartana on the right side, it's an okay Pokemon for one, it's a legendary, like, you know, we've got it at 2600 CP. Those are things that are gonna help you, but it doesn't always just mean that you're gonna win. Let's say that we were fighting the Persian on the other side with Scratch, yeah, we would resist it, but at that level, if we were level 48 and we had a Kartana at 2600, it would likely get paper shredded despite being part steel. You know, it would have that resistance, and we're benefited by having at least somewhat of a spammy moveset. It's not as spammy as I would like it to be, but the charge move being Night Slash, that was kind of key. Night Slash is a little bit better for us in terms of it doesn't take a lot of energy to fire off. It also has a chance at buffing your attack, so that's kind of nice. It has like a chance at the bonus, right? But Kartana doesn't really have fast moves that generate a lot of energy per hit. They're more on the damage side, you know, so they deal more damage than they do energy, especially Razor Leaf. But this one, it's using Air Slash. So let's say Kartana was going up against Rhyperior or something. You would hope that it would be Rhyperior against at least Smackdown, but that still would be kind of rough. But Rhyperior with Mud Slap would be super effective against a Kartana, just as this Kangaskhan actually is on the right side. Kangaskhan using Low Kick, that's a fighting type move, super effective against Steel. So that's why the beginner is soon to switch into the Mewtwo. But let's go back to our expert over there on the left, which is taking on Rhyperior. And so having the Terrakion still alive going into that next fight is good, right? Because not only is it going to be super effective with these fighting moves against the Rhyperior, but also against the Kangaskhan. So let's say you had Kangaskhan coming up in there. The only one it wouldn't be would be for Nidoking. So again, we do have videos on this channel already. We've covered Nidoking before, but that is why, of course, our expert gonna go ahead and switch into Decidueye. So everything we've been talking about up until this point with the spammy fast and charge move combinations, I mentioned that it was to stop Team Go Rocket in their tracks. You also see that we're taking advantage of being able to switch in and out Pokemon, not only at the beginning of the fight, but right about here when that second Pokemon from Giovanni's coming. Usually you have a switch right about this time. So every single time that you switch your Pokemon, or if one faints, so like if you defeat Giovanni or he defeats one of your Pokemon, so switching, but also every single time that a charge move is thrown out there, and that's from either side. It could be Giovanni using a charge attack, it could be you using one. You're gonna see that Team Go Rocket's side, Giovanni in this case, will stand still. The total time is about 3 seconds, and on a switch, it's a longer time. On the charge attacks, it's like a little bit over 2.5 seconds. So again, if you can spam your moves, like you can use the charge attacks really like quite often, that's gonna come to your advantage here once again with making them stand still. So Decidueye was the choice over on the left, not only because we got in a few hits against the Persian with it right at the start, just to generate like 2 hits worth maybe of energy. The Decidueye is part ghost, but the main appeal of it was grass. So the ghost is to resist Persian's scratch attack while we got in those hits to generate energy at the beginning. Of course, Terrakion resisted it being part rock, so that was good. It was like a good setup. Terrakion also helped us with the second spot Pokemon, and so then sending in Decidueye, it's that grass type attacker that we really want to use up against this Rhyperior. Anytime you're going up against Rhyperior, you definitely want to try to have an attack that is going to be water or grass, because that's going to be 256% super effective, not just the usual, I think it's like 156%, so that means like essentially just about doubly super effective. And so Decidueye can actually bring down Rhyperior in one single Frenzy Plant, and Frenzy Plant is the move from Community Day. Hopefully you guys have played the Rowlet Community Day, and so if you don't have Frenzy Plant, you could still probably use a charge attack that's going to be decently related. But you saw Mewtwo take over for the beginner over on the right. That was because the Kartana was about to faint, and again we used the switching to our advantage. Now we went with Mewtwo instead of Garchomp because Garchomp being, it could have Dragon or Ground. Really, Ground would benefit us going up against the final Pokemon, which would be Dialga. But also Mewtwo being Psychic, it's going to resist the low kick from Kangaskhan. It doesn't have really any particular super effectiveness though, so again, these are Pokemon that are not optimized for the fight. And that's something that I always recommend. You know, I'm always saying like adjust to the Giovanni fight based on whatever he's throwing at you and what types are the fast attacks, because like Mewtwo, for example, is weak against Feint Attack from that Persian, so we kind of had to use Kartana just as our only other choice. A beginner oftentimes doesn't have a lot of options, right? You know, like I can say at least on my account on the left, that's my main account, like I have pretty much an option for everything. So no matter what Giovanni throws at me, I feel like I have a Pokemon for the job. But these videos, you know, I'm kind of always just showing you so many different perspectives, so many different scenarios, because that could be the case. So let's see what happens now with Dialga, Giovanni's last Pokemon here. We really would prefer that if the beginner, again, they may not have a lot of options, but also it's not optimized, right? So you're going to see this Garchomp is actually, it's going to do a lot of damage, but it is going to faint right there. Now, Mewtwo did the majority of that damage, you know. Mewtwo, you would probably typically have it with some kind of Psychic charge attack. We're thinking Psy Strike most of the time. That's kind of a good optimized Mewtwo, but in this case, I mean, it was okay to have Ice Beam, like usually that's super effective against Dragon, but Dialga's typing is really advantageous for it in that the Steel, it does have a resistance to the ice, so they just kind of nullify and become neutral, but it was Shadow Mewtwo. It does a lot of damage per hit. But something else we can mention is this is a Dialga on both of these accounts here that they're fighting. It's going to have Dragon Breath, and that's typically, I would say that's a little bit harder of a move to go against compared to Metal Claw. Now that is going to depend on what you have just in your Pokemon Go account, you know, what's in your box. But Dragon Breath, you really want to stop it in its tracks as much as you can, so have those spammy moves, and that's where the expert comes in with Melmetal. Not only are you going to get good resistance with Melmetal from it, Steel going to resist Dragon, but Melmetal is bulky. You can see that this one is below 1500 CP. I did that again just to kind of handicap myself. Like if you could have like a 3000 CP Melmetal, go for it, man. And make sure, of course, the charge attack right now is set up for this fight. It's superpower. I typically won't have superpower on my Melmetal. Not my choice of attack. I'm usually PvE oriented, but that Melmetal really is set up to go against Dialga. We're going to Thunder Shock Shock, which doesn't have really an advantage here, but it generates plenty of energy per hit. It can kind of attack pretty fast, and then Superpower is really for the super effectiveness, and it doesn't take a lot of energy to fire off, right? So we like all of those things. But we'll switch into Terrakion as soon as we can, just because Melmetal, I mean, while it resists, while it's bulky, yes, it's gonna be a tough fight at these levels, right? Me at level 48, so fighting a crazy hard Dialga. I mean, 18,789 CP, that's crazy. But you know, the Melmetal below 1500, it's like, hey, let's just send in this Terrakion. It's gonna get super effective with that fighting type. Let's go ahead. Sacred Sword, we can at least Sacred Sword one more time. And the Dialga on the right, it's not even in the 5-digit CP, so 9918. This is really only a situation where that beginner account could win at those levels, right? Like if you try to use those same Pokemon and same movesets against the CP amounts that I'm fighting over there on the left side, like that account on the right, it would just be doomed. So again, it's like you can see that this is the way that the beginner would win. That's why the video is titled How to Win as a Beginner or an Expert, is we show you, yeah, the beginner is not really set up, it's not really optimized here, but we did pick some options, even though we didn't have a lot of them. We went with legendaries. It was an account by someone that I know that said that they were carried through some raids. They don't have a lot of raid bosses, and it was true. Looking through the account, this is mostly it, you know, is Kartana, Mewtwo, maybe one other, but yeah, it's really kind of still by the skin of our teeth on both of these accounts. I like to use that phrase. It's very close. And so if you watch this and you're like, this didn't work for me, yeah, the reason is what I said before, right? You have to adjust it based on what you're fighting. Like if you go up against Nidoking, or if your trainer level is, let's say, insanely high, but you're kind of using the wrong Pokemon, like it's not going to work for you. What if your Melmetal has Rock Slide instead of Superpower? You know, that's like so different. So some people, they'll comment that to me without telling me, well, what did you fight? What was Giovanni's movesets, you know, that you're going up against? What are your Pokemon's movesets? What's your trainer level? You know, these are all things that influence the fight, and they play a big role if you're struggling. I realize that some people out there are just going to overpower Giovanni and like outmuscle him with 3,000, 4,000 CP, 5,000 Mega Pokemon, you know, whatever. And it's like, hey, you can sometimes win from that, but I'm telling you how to win based on actual strategy, based on either beginner or expert perspectives in Pokemon Go. But that's also why it's going to sound pluggy, but this is legit. You do have to go and watch my other videos, because this one, it does handle 2 different Giovanni perspectives, but there's, you know, 8, 10, I don't know how many total different possibilities that you could be fighting of movesets or Pokemon from him. And so go ahead, click that end screen on screen, be taken to another video, check the description, and thanks for viewing.